How do I sound? Okay, I can hear me pretty well. That's a good thing. Good. Mute all the other streams I'm watching. I'm here. I was a minute late, but I'm here. So there's always that. Ooh. Missouri plus Vampire Creators making a new series. Cool. No, that's sorry. Okay. We are doing more good old fairy tales. Why do I have myself up on multiple screens? I don't have a screen open. That blows. Post the Twitter stuff. Whip out the old book. What is that from? Then vanishes. Of course it does. I question something and it just appears. Let's see, 2. 4 different Discords. Top of posting on Twitter. Dun, 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 dun. Have fun. Okay, get the share more. Do a quick sound check. I mean, I can hear myself fine. I just can't do the Vincent Price laugh. I thought I took that off. Oh wow. Okay, it cuts it out from my version of it, but it goes fine on stream. Ain't that about a pain in the ass? And the reason I said I couldn't do the Vincent Price laugh is because, of all things, YouTube tagged me for that for copyright. So I just may record myself because I'm just that kind of guy. Three bottles of water. What was my first story tonight? Ooh, the Master Thief. Okay, let's write it down. Back in place. Give it a second or two to see if anyone's going to pop up. Not that I honestly think anyone will, but hey, I can try, right? I got a community box. Okay. Who's that? Okay. Switch them off. Okay, and Pokemon's going on. I have 6 bots active right now. If stuff doesn't happen, I will be concerned. And it is 9:10, so 9:10, let's begin. There we go. I do have the chat on here. I'm not turning off the sound alerts, so I'm going to be reading. So there's that. If it sounds strange, it's because I'm actually using the stereo microphones on my laptop. Which is about as close to ASMR setup as I can get right now. Sound good? As, actual paper book. Because why shouldn't it be? And time is waiting for the actual stream time to get at 10 minutes. Oh, excuse me. Okay, 10 minutes. Our first story for tonight is the Master Thief. There once was a tenant farmer who had 3 sons. He had no inheritance to leave them and no work to give them, nor did he know what to do with them. He said they would be allowed to do whatever they liked and whatever they had to do most. They could go wherever they wished. He would gladly keep them company along the way, and that's what he did. He went with them until they came to a place where 3 roads diverged. There, each son chose a road. Then their father said goodbye to them and went back home. I've never heard what happened to the 2 older sons, but the youngest son walked a long way and for a very long time. One night he was walking through a big forest when a terrible storm came up. The wind gusted and blew so hard that the boy could hardly keep his eyes open. Before he knew it, he'd gone completely astray. He couldn't find either the road or a path, but he kept going. Finally, he caught sight of a light off in the distance, deep in the forest. He thought he should try to head in that direction, and at long last he arrived. He found a big house, and the fire was burning so brightly inside that he could see someone who hadn't yet gone to bed. So he went in, and there he found an old woman tidying up. "Good evening, ma'am," said the boy. "Good evening," said the old woman. "Whew, what terrible weather we have tonight," said the boy. "Yes, you're right," said the old woman. "Could I stay here and take shelter for the night?" asked the boy. "That probably wouldn't be a good idea," said the old woman. "If the folks come home and find you here, they will both kill you and me." "What sort of folks live here?" said the boy. "Oh, they're robbers and awful riffraff," said the old woman. "They stole me when I was little and made me work as their housekeeper," she said. "I think I'll stay here all the same," said the boy. "Whatever happens will happen. I don't want to go back out into such weather tonight." "Well, you'll suffer the worst of it then," said the old woman. The boy lay down on bed, but he didn't dare fall asleep, as soon enough the robbers came home. The old woman told them that a stranger had appeared, and she couldn't get him to leave. "Did you see if he has any money?" said the robbers. "Money? That poor wretch," said the old woman. "He barely even has clothes on his back." The robbers began muttering to each other about what they should do with him. Maybe they should kill him, or maybe they should do something else. In the meantime, the boy got up and started talking to the robbers. He asked if they needed a servant, for he might like to work for them. "Well," they said, "if that's what you want to do, and you're willing to take up our trade, then we can find work here." "All right," said the boy. "It doesn't matter what the trade is, for when I left home, my father had given me permission to take up whatever sort I would like." "Would you like to steal?" said the robbers. "Yes," said the boy. He didn't think that it would be a hard trade to learn. A man who had 3 oxen lived some distance away. He was going to take one of them down to sell, and the robbers had heard about this. They told the boy that if he was able to steal the ox from the man so that he didn't know it was stolen, and so the man did him no harm, he would be allowed to work as a servant for the robbers. Well, the boy found a lovely shoe with a silver buckle lying on the road, and he took it with him as he set off. He placed the shoe in the road where the man was going to pass by with his ox. Then he went into the forest to hide behind a bush. When the man approached, he saw the shoe at once. "What a grand shoe!" he said. "If I had the mate to it, I could take it home with me. That certainly would make my wife tender-hearted for once." His wife was always so angry and mean that there was no time at all between the thrashings she gave him. But he decided there was nothing he could do with just one shoe if he didn't have the mates, so he left it lying there and continued on his way. The boy picked up the shoe and hurried off as fast as he could go through the forest to get ahead of the man. Then he again set the shoe in the road. When the man got there with the ox, He was annoyed that he'd been so stupid enough to leave the man's shoe behind instead of taking it with him. I suppose I should run back and get the other one, he said to himself. He tied the ox to a rail fence. Then I'll have a pair of shoes for my wife. Then maybe she'll turn tender-hearted for once. He finally went back and looked and looked for a very long time, but he found no shoe. Finally, he had to go back and took with him the one shoe that he'd found. In the meantime, the boy had stolen the ox and gone on his way. When the man got back and saw his ox was gone, he started to weep and carry on, for he was afraid his wife would kill him when she found he'd lost the ox. He decided to go home and get a second ox and take it to town, without letting his wife know what he was doing. And that's what he did. He went home and got the second ox without his wife noticing, and then he set off to town. But the robbers knew all about this, for they had their spies out. They told the boy that if he could take the second ox, so the man didn't know it was stolen, and so the man did him no harm, then he would be their equal. The boy said that would be no problem. This time he took along a rope. He wrapped the rope under his arm and hung himself from a tree in the middle of the road where the man would pass. When the man appeared with his ox and caught sight of the ghost hanging there, he felt a bit uneasy. What heavy thoughts you must have had to hang yourself like that. Oh well, I'll just have to leave you hanging there. I can't blow life back into you, he said, and he continued on with his ox. The boy got down from the tree and raced along a shortcut to get ahead of the man. Again he hung himself from a tree in the middle of the road. I wonder if you really had such heavy thoughts that you hanged yourself here. Or is this a ghost I'm seeing? Said the man. Oh well, I'll just have to leave you hanging there. It makes no difference whether you're a ghost or something else, he said, and he went on his way with the ox. The boy did exactly the same thing he'd done before. He jumped down from a tree, raced along a shortcut through the forest, and again hung himself from a tree in the middle of the road. When the man caught sight of the boy again, he said to himself, How vile this is! Do these boys really have such heavy thoughts that they hang themselves? All three of them? No, I can't believe anything but phantoms that I'm seeing. But I'm going to find out for sure. If the other two are still hanging there, then they're real. But if they're not hanging there, I'm seeing nothing but ghosts. He tied up the ox and ran back to see if the other two boys were still hanging there. While the man walked around and peered up into the trees, the boy jumped down, took the ox, and went on his way. When the man came back and saw that the ox was gone, he was beside himself, as you might as well imagine. He wept and carried on, but he finally resigned himself to what had happened. There's nothing to do but go home, he thought, and take the third ox without letting my wife see what I'm doing. I'll have to try even harder to sell this one for a good price. He went home and got the third ox and set off without his wife noticing. But the robbers knew full well what he was doing. They told the boy that if he could steal the third ox the same way he'd stolen the first two, then he would be master of them all. The boy set off running through the forest. And when the man appeared with his ox, the boy began bellowing loudly, horribly, sounding just like a big ox inside the forest. When the man heard this, he was happy, for he thought he recognized the voice of his ox. He now thought that he'd find both of them. He tied up his third ox and raced off in search of the forest. In the meantime, the boy took off with the third ox. When the man came back and saw that he'd lost that one too, he wept and carried on. For days he didn't dare go back home. He was afraid that his wife would strike him dead. The robbers weren't happy either, for now they had to say the boy was the master of them all. One day they thought they would tried doing something that the boy couldn't do. All of them set off and left him alone. The first thing they did after they had left the herd of oxen out to the road, so they enjoyed out to the road so they would go home to the man he'd stolen them from. The farmer was overjoyed, as you could well imagine. Then the boy took the horses that belonged to the robbers and loaded them with the best of everything he could find: gold, silver, and clothing, and other magnificent things. He told the old woman to give his greetings and to thank the robbers, for he was now setting off, and they would have trouble catching him. With that, he left. At long last, the robbers came to the road he'd been traveling when he happened upon the robbers. As he headed for the house where his father lived, he put on a uniform that he'd found inside the stolen goods and he'd taken from the robbers. It seemed to have been made for a general. Then he rode into the farmyard like some grand personage. He went inside and asked if he might take shelter there. No, that would be impossible. How could I offer lodging to such a fine gentleman? How could I? Said the farmer. I barely have bedclothes for my own bed, and they're the most wretched sort. You've always been a hard man, that you have, said the boy. And I hear that you still are, seeing as you refuse to offer lodging to your own son. Are you my son? Said the man. Don't you recognize me? Said the boy. Well, then he did recognize him after all. But what have you been doing to become such a fine gentleman so quickly? Said the father. Well, let me tell you, said the boy. You said I could take up whatever I liked, so I became an apprentice to some thieves and robbers. I've finished my apprenticeship, and now I'm a master thief, he said. It so happened that a bailiff lived near the house where the boy's father lived. The bailiff owned a big farm and had so much money that he couldn't count it all. He also had a daughter who was both beautiful and lovely, sweet and kind. The master thief wanted her for his wife. He told his father to go to the bailiff and ask for ask for the daughter to be his bride. If he asks you what my trade is, tell him I'm a master thief, he said. I think you're crazy. That I do, said the man. You can't be very clever if you're suggesting such madness. The boy insisted he should go to the bailiff and ask for the daughter's hand, but there was no getting around it. But I don't dare go to the bailiff and speak to him on your behalf. He's a very rich man, and he has so much money, said the farmer. The master thief said that he couldn't be helped. He had to go whether he wanted to or not. If his father didn't do it willingly, then he'd have to force him to go. Still, the man refused. So the boy followed on the heels and threatened him with a big birch club. The farmer was weeping by the time he stepped through the door to the bailiff's house. So, my man, what's the matter? Said the bailiff. He told the bailiff they had 3 sons who had set off one day. He promised them that they could travel wherever they wished and take up whatever work they liked. And now the youngest of them has come back home. He threatened me until I agreed to come here and to ask on his behalf for your daughter's hand in marriage. I'm supposed to tell you that he's a master thief, said the man as he wept and carried on. Rest easy, my man, said the bailiff and laughed. Tell him from me that first he'll have to prove it. If he can steal the roast from the spit in the kitchen on Sunday, while they're all watching, then he shall have my daughter. Go ahead and tell him that. And that's what the man did. The boy thought that would be a very easy task. He got hold of 3 live hares and put them in a sack. Then he dressed himself in rags. He looked so wretched and miserable that he was a pitiable sight to behold. On Sunday morning he crept along the hall like any other ragged boy, carrying a sack. The bailiff and all his household servants were in the kitchen watching over the roast. All of a sudden the boy let a hare out of the sack. It took off and racing around the yard outside. "Oh, look at that hare," they said in the kitchen. They went to go and catch it. The bailiff saw it too. "Let it go," he said. "It's useless to think of catching a hare that's running away." It wasn't long before the boy let another hare out of the sack. The servants in the kitchen thought it was the same one, and they wanted to go out to catch it. But the bailiff said it would be of no use. A short time later the boy let the third hare out. It took off and ran around the yard outside. Everyone in the kitchen saw this hare too. They thought it was the same one as before. They wanted to go out and catch it. "That's a very strange hare," said the bailiff. "Come on, let's see if we can catch it." He and everyone else went outside. The hare ran, and they chased after it the best they could. In the meantime, the master thief took a roast and ran off. I don't know where the bailiff found roast for his dinner, but this much I do know: he didn't have a roast hare, even though he ran until he was both sweaty and tired. The pastor came to dinner, and the bailiff told him about the trick the master thief had played upon him. The pastor made fun of him and refused to let up. "I know I would never allow such a man to make a fool of me," said the pastor. "Well, you'd better watch out." "Yes, you should," said the bailiff. "Before you know it, he may turn up at your place." But the pastor kept on making fun of the bailiff for allowing himself to be fooled. Later in the afternoon, the master thief arrived to get the bailiff's daughter, as he'd been promised. "Hey, Thomaskin." "First, you'll have to pass a few more tests," the bailiff insisted. "What you did today wasn't very impressive. Why don't you play a clever prank on the pastor?" "He's sitting inside and laughing at me, for I let myself be fooled by a young man like you." The master thief said he could easily do that. He dressed himself like a bird by wrapping a big white sheet around his body. He broke off wings from a goose and fastened them to his back. Then he climbed up in a big maple tree and stood in the pastor's yard. When the pastor came home that evening, the boy began shrieking, "Mr. Laws! Mr. Laws!" The pastor's name was Mr. Lars. "Who's calling me?" said the pastor. "I'm an angel sent by the Lord to proclaim that you shall be received alive in the Lord's kingdom, for you are a good, God-fearing man," said the master thief. "Next Monday evening you must make ready to leave. That's when I will come fetch you in a sack. And in your parlor you must pile up all your gold and silver and everything else you own of worldly values." Mr. Lars offered his thanks and fell to his knees before the angel. On the following Sunday he preached a farewell sermon. He said that an angel from the Lord had perched in a big maple tree in his yard and proclaimed that he would be taken alive to God's kingdom, and for as such a God-fearing man. He preached and sermonized so well that everyone in the church wept, both old and young. On Monday, the master thief appeared again as an angel. The pastor offered his thanks and fell to his knees. Then he was stuffed inside the sack. After the pastor was inside, the master thief dragged him and hauled him over to the rocks and tussocks. "Ow! Ow!" cried the pastor inside the sack. "Where are we going?" "It's the narrow road that leads to the kingdom of heaven," the master thief said as he dragged him along and practically killed him. Finally, he threw the pastor into the bailiff's goose coop. The geese began hissing and snapping at him, so he ended up more dead than alive. "Ow! Ow! Ow! Where am I now?" said the pastor. "You're in purgatory to be cleansed and purified for eternal life," said the master thief. Then he left, taking along the gold and silver and all other magnificent things the pastor had piled up in his parlor. The next morning, when the goose girl came to let the geese out, she heard the pastor wailing inside a sack. "In Christ's name, who are you, and what's the matter with you?" she said. "Oh, if you're an angel from heaven, get me out of here. Let me go back to earth. This is worse than hell. Little demons are nipping at me with their pincers, said the pastor. Goodness, I'm not an angel, said the girl, who helped the pastor out of the sack. I just take care of the bailiff's geefs. That's all I do. It must be the little goslings that have been pinching you, sir. Master thief must have done this. Oh, my gold and silver and all my magnificent clothes, cried the pastor. He began carrying on, and he ran back home. The goose girl thought he must have lost his wits. The bailiff found out what happened to the pastor, and when he heard the man had been put in purgatory and traveled the narrow road, he practically laughed himself senseless. When the master thief came and asked for his daughter, he'd been promised, but the bailiff insisted. You'll have to play an even better prank so that I can truly see what you're able to do. I have 12 horses in the stable, he said. I'll put 12 riders on them, one on each. If you're clever enough to steal the horses from under these men, then I'll see what I can do. All right, I agree, said the master thief. If it means that I can have your daughter. Yes, if you can do that, you shall have the best that I own, said the bailiff. So the master thief went to a peddler and bought some liquor and 2 pocket flasks. In one flask he added a sleeping potion, and the other contained only liquor. Then he ordered 11 men to sleep behind the bailiff's barn that night. For a few coins he persuaded an old woman to lend him a skirt and a shirt made of wooden staves. Then he picked up the walking stick and flung a sack on his back. When evening arrived, he limped off towards the bailiff's stables. When he arrived, the men were busy watering the horses for the night. What the hell do you want? Said one of the grooms to the old woman. It's so cold, said the woman, shivering and shuddering and carrying on. It's so cold that a poor soul might freeze to death. Then she shivered and shook even more. Oh, dear God, can I stay here and sit inside the stable door? She said. Devil take me, no. Get out of here at once. If the bailiff catches sight of you, he'll rake us over the coals, said one of the grooms. Oh, that pitiful hag, said another, who seemed to feel sorry for her. Let the old hag sit there. She'll do no harm. The others didn't want to allow it. They began arguing, and they tended the horses. In the meantime, the old woman retreated further inside the stable until she sat down behind the door. After that, nobody paid her any mind. As night fell, the men found it cold to be sitting still on horseback. It's feverishly cold, said one of them, flapping his arms. Yes, I'm freezing so much that I'm shaking, said another. If only we had some tobacco, said another man. One of the men did have a quarter wad of snuff, and he divided it among to share. There wasn't much for each of them, but they chewed and they spat. I helped a little, but suddenly things seemed just as bad as before. Brr, one of them said, as he started shaking. Brr, said the old woman, with her teeth clattering so hard her teeth rattled. Then she got a flask of liquor. Her hand shook as she took some liquor and spilled out. She took a very long swig, and gurgling sound came from her throat. What have you got in that flask of yours, old woman? Said one of the grooms. Oh, it's just a drop of liquor, sir, she said. Liquor? Can that be true? Let me have a swig. Let me have a swig, shouted all 12 of the men at once. Oh, I have so little, whined the old woman. It's not even enough to wet your whistle. But they wanted some. They had to have some, and there was no getting around it. So she got out the flask with a sleeping potion and held it to the lips of the first man. She wasn't shaking anymore, and she was careful to keep moving the flask to make sure each man got what they needed. The 12th man had barely had a swig before the first one began snoring. Then the master thief threw off his rags and easily lifted down one man after another and placed them aside the stall partitions. Then he shouted for his own 11 men, and they set off for the bailiff's horses. When the bailiff came out in the morning and saw his men, they were just beginning to stir. They pounded their spurs against partitions as splinters of wood flew out. Some of them fell off, while others remained where they were, sitting there like fools. Oh, yes, said the bailiff, I can certainly tell who's been here. What a miserable bunch of men you are. How could you sit there and let the master thief steal the horses out from under you? and they were all berated for not paying closer attention. Later in the day, the master thief came back and told the bailiff that now he's done it, and now he wanted the man's daughter, as he'd been promised. But the bailiff gave him $100 and said he'd have to do something better. Do you think you can steal the horse from under me while I'm out riding? Oh, I'm sure I can, said the master thief, if it means that I can have your daughter. The bailiff said he would see what he could do. One morning he announced he was going riding in the big exercise grounds. The master thief at once got hold of an old, worn-out nag. He made harnesses of nothing but reeds and twigs from the bottom. He bought an old, broken-down wagon and a big barrel. When he told the poor old woman that he'd given her $10 if she could get inside the barrel and open her mouth wide to plug the hole. And that's where he would stick in his finger. Nothing bad would happen to her, for she would ride around for a while, and if he took out his finger more than once, then she would get $10 more. Huh? Then the master thief dressed in rags and covered himself with soot. He put on a big wig and a big beard made from bristly goat hair so that no one would recognize him. Then he set off to the exercise grounds, where the bailiff had already begun riding for a long time. When the master thief got there, he slowed down to such a snail's pace that the wagon was barely moving at all. He crept forward little by little, and stopped, then again crept forward a little. It was such a sorry sight that the bailiff would never dream that this was the master thief. The bailiff came riding over to him and asked if he'd seen anyone sneaking through the forest. No, he hadn't seen anyone like that. Listen here, said the bailiff. If you're willing to ride to the forest and take a look and see if anyone is sneaking around, then I'll loan you my horse, and I'll give you a tip for your trouble. No, I can't do that, said the man. I'm going to a wedding with this mead barrel I'm supposed to deliver. Plug fell along the way, and I have to keep my finger on the hole. Oh, don't worry about that. I'll look after both your horse and the barrel. With that, the man agreed to go, but he told the bailiff that he must be quick to put his finger in the hole when he took his finger out. The bailiff said that he'd do his best. Then the master thief mounted the bailiff's horse. A few minutes later, the hours did too, and no one came back. Finally, the bailiff got tired of sticking his finger in the hole and pulled it out. Now I want $10 more, cried the old woman inside the barrel. When the bailiff realized what was happening with the mead barrel, he set off for home. After he'd walked for a while, the servants came to meet him, bringing a horse, for the master thief had already been to his house. The next day the master thief came to see the bailiff and asked for his daughter, as he'd promised. The bailiff gave him $200, and again insisted that he'd have to pass another test. If he'd passed, then he could have his daughter. Now, leave this guy on, man. The master thief agreed. He just needed to know what sort of test it was. Do you think you can steal the sheet off our bed and the shift off my wife? Said the bailiff. It's not impossible, said the master thief. If it means I can truly have your daughter, then I'll do it. When night fell, he went out and cut down a thief who was hanging on the gallows. He threw the corpse over his shoulder and set off with it. Then he got hold of a big ladder and placed it against the bailiff's bedroom window. He climbed up and shoved the dead man up and down as if he were outside the window and peering inside. There's the master thief, mother, said the bailiff, poking his wife. I'm going to shoot him, he said. And he picked up the rifle that he placed next to the bed. Oh, no, don't do that, said his wife. You're the one who told him to come here. Oh, yes, I'm going to shoot him, mother, he said. And he lay there taking aim, but the head kept popping up, and you could see little of it, and then it would suddenly disappear. Finally, the bailiff took careful aim and fired. The dead man fell to the ground with a thud. The master thief climbed down the ladder as fast as he could. It's true that I'm the highest authority here, said the bailiff, but folks like to gossip. It would be a shame if they caught sight of a dead man. It's probably best if I go and bury him. Do as you please, father, said his wife. The bailiff got up and headed downstairs. As soon as he stepped out of the door, the master thief slipped inside and went upstairs to the wife. So, father, she said, I thought you were... For she thought he was her husband. Are you already done? Oh, yes, I stuffed him into a hole, that I did, he said. And I scraped some earth on top of him so he's hidden, for the weather is terrible. I'll make a better job of it later. Let me use this sheet to dry myself off. He was covered in blood, and got some of it on me. She gave him the sheet. You better let me have your shift, too, he said. I can see the sheet isn't enough. And she did. Then he remembered that he'd forgotten to close the front door, so he left, carrying both the sheet and the shift. A little later, the real bailiff came back. Well, it certainly took you a long time to close the door, father, said his wife. What have you done with my shift and sheets? What did you say? Said the bailiff. I asked you what you had done with my shift and the sheet that you used to dry off the blood. That's what I asked, she said. Damn it to hell, said the bailiff. Did he actually manage to do that? The next day, the master thief appeared, and he wanted the bailiff's daughter as he'd been promised. The bailiff didn't dare refuse him. He gave her to him, along with a great deal of money, for he was afraid the master thief might even steal his eyes from his head. If he broke his promise, folks might gossip about him. The master thief lived a happy and prosperous life. Whether he stole anything again, I can't say. But if he did, it was no doubt only for fun. Man, that was a long story. Did you stick around through it? No, you're still there. That's it, man. I kind of like the story. Pick escaped. Damn. That was actually a half-hour story? Damn. I think I've read one that long in here before. Oh. Why am I not hearing my background noise? Should I have a background noise? Okay, there's my fireplace. I can hear now. That's good. Second one was a half-hour story. Let's see. What's the next one? What am I getting? The penguin popping? Let's figure out what that Phosabot's not doing announcements. I don't have Phosabot open. Do I? I don't have Phosabot open.
first one. Okay, first question, join the channel. Okay, first question on Lucy. Not for supply. Okay. So this first one's here. Okay. Let's hope I can get us next story. So, the next story is 3 sisters who were taken into the mountain. There once was an old woman who lived with her 3 daughters, far from any village, way up under a ridge. She was so poor that she owned nothing but a hen. She loved that hen dearly. It was the apple of her eye. She clucked to it and tended to it morning and night. One day, the hen disappeared. The woman went out for a walk around the house, searching and calling, but the hen was gone, and gone it stayed. "You have to go out and search for our hen. Yes, you must," she said the woman to the oldest daughter. "We must get it back, even if we have to go into the mountain to find it." The daughter set off to look for the hen. She went here and there, searching and calling, but she found no hen. All of a sudden she heard a voice saying from inside the mountain, "The hen is skittering inside the mountain. The hen is skittering inside the mountain." The girl went over to see who was speaking. When she came to the mountain wall, she fell through a hatch and landed in a deep vault, deep underground. There she walked through many rooms, each more splendid than the last. In the innermost room was a big, hideous mountain man. He came towards her. "Will you be my sweetheart?" he asked. "No," she said. She certainly would not. She wanted to go back up at once and look for the hen that had disappeared. The mountain man grew so angry that he grabbed the girl and twisted off her head. He threw the body and the head into the cellar. The woman sat at home and waited, but her daughter didn't come back. She waited a while longer. When she neither saw nor heard from the girl, she told the middle daughter that she would have to go out and look for her sister. "And can you call for the hen at the same time?" she said. So the second sister set off. The exact same thing happened to her. She walked and searched and called, and all of a sudden she also heard a voice speaking from inside the mountain. "The hen is skittering inside the mountain. The hen is skittering inside the mountain." The girl thought that was strange. She went over to see who was speaking, and she too fell through a hatch and landed in a deep, deep vault underground. There she walked through the rooms,
In the innermost room, the mountain man came to her and asked her if she would be his sweetheart. No, she certainly would not. She wanted to go back up at once and search for the hen that had disappeared. That's what she wanted. The mountain man grew very angry. He grabbed the girl, twisted off her head, then threw the head and the body into the cellar. The woman sat and waited forever and a day for her second daughter, but she didn't see or hear from the girl. Then she said to the youngest daughter, "Well, now you'll just have to set off and look for your sisters. It was bad enough that the hen disappeared. It's even worse that they would never see your sisters again. You can always call for the hen at the same time." So the youngest daughter set off. She went here and there. She searched and she called, but she couldn't see the hen, and she didn't see her sisters. At long last, she too came to the mountain wall. Then she heard a voice saying, "The hen is skittering inside the mountain. The hen is skittering inside the mountain." She thought that was strange. She went over to have a look, and then she too fell through the hatch. She landed in the vault deep, deep underground. Down there she walked through many rooms, each more splendid than the last. But she wasn't frightened. She took her time and looked carefully at one thing and another. Then she caught sight of the trapdoor to the cellar. She looked down inside and recognized at once her sisters, who were both lying there. As soon as she closed the trapdoor, the mountain man came to her. "Will you be my sweetheart? Will you?" asked the mountain man. "Yes, gladly," said the girl, for she realized what must have happened to her sisters. When the troll heard this, he gave her the most splendid clothes, the loveliest she had ever imagined, along with everything else she might want. He was so happy that someone wanted to be his sweetheart. I can relate. One day, after the girl had been there for a while, she seemed more sullen and silent than usual. The mountain man asked her why she was so sullen. "Oh," said the girl, "it's because I can't go home to see my mother. She's probably hungry and thirsty, and no one is living with her anymore." "I'll allow you to go visit her," replied the troll. "But fill a sack with food, and I'll take it to her." The girl thanked him. That's exactly what she would do. In the bottom of the sack, she stuffed a great quantity of gold and silver, and then she put a little food on top. She told the troll the sack was heavy already, but not to peek inside. He promised not to look. When the mountain man set off, the girl watched him through the little peephole in the hatch. After he'd gone a short distance along the road, he said, "This sack is so heavy, I want to see what's inside it." "Yes, I do." He was about to untie the cord, but the girl shouted, "I can see you! I can see you!" "I can't believe what sharp eyes you have," said the troll. And then he didn't try to look inside anymore. When he got to the house where the widow lived, he threw the sack inside the front door. "Here's some food from your daughter. Don't go looking for her," he said. One day after the girl had been inside the mountain for a good long while, a billy goat happened to fall through the hatch. "Who asked you to come here, you shaggy-haired beast?" said the troll. He was in such a vile mood that he grabbed the goat and twisted its head off, then threw it in the cellar. "Oh no, why did you do that?" said the girl. "I would have liked to keep the goat to amuse me." "Goat? No need to look so mournful. Let me tell you," said the troll. "I can easily bring that billy goat back to life. Yes, I can." With that, he grabbed a flask that hung on the wall. Then he set the head on the back of the goat and smeared what was in the flask. The goat was as good as new. "Aha," thought the girl. "That flask is certainly worth having." After she'd been with the troll for a good long time, she waited until one day when he went out. Then she put the head back on her elder sister and smeared her with what was in the flask. The sister instantly came back to life. Then the girl stuffed her into a sack and put a little food on top. As soon as the troll came home, she said to him, "My dear sir, I need you to take more money, or more food to my mother. I'm sure she'll be hungry and thirsty. Poor thing. And she's all alone, but don't peek inside the sack." The troll said he would take the sack to her mother and promised not to look inside. But after he'd gone a short distance along the road, he thought the sack seemed awfully heavy. After he'd walked a little more, he decided he would look inside. "No matter how sharp her eyes are, she won't be able to see me," he said to himself. The instant he began to untie the cord, the sister who was inside the sack said, "I can see you! I can see you!" "I can't believe what sharp eyes you have," said the troll. He thought it was the girl on the mountain talking. Then he didn't dare try to look inside anymore. He carried the sack to the mother's house as fast as he could go. When he came to the front door, he threw the sack inside. "Here is some food from your daughter, but don't go looking for her," he said. After the girl had been inside the mountain for another good long while, she did the same thing with the second sister. She set her head back on, smeared her with what was inside the flask, and stuffed her into a sack. This time she put as much gold and silver as the sack could hold, and on the very top she put a little food. "My dear sir," she said to the troll, "you have to take a little food to my mother again, but don't look inside the sack." The troll was happy to do as he wished, and promised not to look inside. But after he'd gone a short distance along the road, he thought the sack seemed awfully heavy, and he couldn't carry it any further. He set it down so he could rest. He was about to untie the cord and look inside, but the sister inside the sack shouted, "I can see you! I can see you!" "I can't believe what sharp eyes you have," said the troll, and he didn't dare look inside the sack anymore. Instead, he rushed off as fast as he could and carried the sack straight into the mother's house. When he was standing outside the front door, he threw the sack inside. "Here's some food from your daughter, but don't go looking for her," he said. One day, after the girl had been there another good long while, the troll had to go out. Then the girl pretended to be both wretched and ill. She shivered and carried on. "It will do no good for me to come home before 12 o'clock, she said. "I won't have the meal ready until then, but I'm feeling so wretched and ill." After the troll left, she stuffed some of her clothes with straw and stood the straw girl in the corner next to the hearth. She put a stirring stick in the straw girl's hands, so it looked like she was the one standing there. Then she hurried home. She took along a marksman who would stay there with her in her mother's house. At 12 o'clock, or thereabouts, the troll came home. "Bring me my food," he said to the straw girl, but she didn't answer. "Bring me my food," said the troll again. "I'm hungry." She didn't answer. "Bring me my food," he bellowed for the third time. "Listen to what I'm saying, or else I'll have to shake you awake. Yes, I will." But the girl stood there, just as silent as before. The troll was furious. He grabbed her and squeezed her so tight that the pieces of straw flew out at the walls and ceiling. When he saw that, he got suspicious and began searching everywhere. Finally, he went down to the cellar and saw that both girls' sisters were gone. He realized at once what had happened. "Oh, she'll have to pay for this," he said, and he set off for where the mother lived. When he came to her house, the marksman fired his rifle. Then the troll didn't dare go inside, for he thought it was thunder. He set off for home as fast as he could. Just as he came to the hatch, the sun rose, and then he burst. There's probably plenty of gold and silver left in them, if only someone were to find the hatch.
Trolls aren't good in sunlight. Tolkien's trolls just turned to stone. These trolls tend to catch fire and explode. I love these stories. That one was only a 15-minute. Not too bad. Okay. This one sounds interesting. The next story is about the giant troll who never carried his heart with him. There once was a king who had 7 sons. He was so fond of them that he could never let all of them leave together. One son always had to stay behind. When they were grown, 6 of the brothers were going to set off to find wives, but the father wanted to keep the youngest son at home. The others were supposed to bring a princess back to the royal palace for him. The king gave his 6 sons the most splendid clothes that anyone had ever seen, clothes that cost many hundreds of dollars. Then they set off. After they visited many royal palaces and seen many princesses, at long last they came to a king who had 6 daughters. They had never seen such a lovely princesses, and each of them proposed to one of them. After they had won them as their sweethearts, they headed home. They were so in love with their sweethearts that they'd completely forgotten they were supposed to bring back a princess for Ashlad, who had stayed at home. After they had traveled a good distance along the road, they passed very close to a steep mountain wall. That's where the troll had his farm. The troll came out and caught sight of the travelers. He turned all of them into stone, both the princes and the princesses. The king waited and waited for his 6 sons, but no matter how long he waited, none of them returned. He grew terribly distressed and said he would never be happy again. "If I didn't have you," he said to Ashlad, "I would not want to live. That's how filled with sorrow I am, for I have lost all of your brothers." "I was thinking of asking your permission to go and find them. That's what I was thinking," said Ashlad. "No, I won't allow it," said his father. "You would disappear too." But Ashlad wanted to go. He had to go. He begged and pleaded for so long that the king had to let him leave. But the king had nothing but an old nag to give him, for the 6 other sons and their entourage had been given all of the other horses he owned. Ashlad didn't care. He mounted the old mangy horse. "Goodbye, father," he said to the king. "I'm sure I'll be back. Maybe I'll bring my 6 brothers back with me, too." With that, he left. After he'd been riding for a while, Ashlad came upon a raven lying in the road, flapping its wings. The bird was so hungry that it couldn't even move aside. "My dear man, give me a little food, and I'll help you when you're in dire need," said the raven. "I don't have much food, but you don't look like you'll be able to offer me much help," said the king's son. "But I can certainly give you something to eat. I can see that you're hungry." And he gave the raven some provisions he brought along. After he traveled a little further, Ashlad came to a stream. There he saw a big salmon that had ended up on dry land. The fish was flapping and flailing and couldn't get back into the water. "My dear man, help me back into the water,"
said the salmon to the king's son. "And I'll help you when you're in dire need, that he will." "Whatever help you can offer won't be much," said the prince, "but it's a shame to have you lie there and starve to death." So he pushed the fish back, pushed the fish back into the water. He traveled a long way, and then he came upon a wolf. The wolf was so limp with hunger that he lay stretched out in the middle of the road. "My dear man, let me have your horse," said the wolf. "I'm so hungry that my guts are whistling, and I haven't had anything to eat in 2 years." "No," said Aslan, "I can't do that. First I came upon a raven, and then I had to give him my provisions. Then I came upon a salmon, and I had to give him help back into the water. Now you want to have my horse. I can't do that, for then I have nothing to ride." "Oh, please, sir, dear sir, you have to help me," said the grey one. "You can ride on me, and I'll in turn help you find when you're in dire need," the wolf said. "Well, the help you can offer me won't be much, but you can have my horse. I can see that you're in great need," said the prince. After the wolf had eaten the horse, Aslan put a bridle bit in the wolf's mouth and a saddle on his back. By now the wolf had grown so strong from eating the horse that he set off as if the king's son weighed nothing at all. The prince had never ridden so fast before. "After we've traveled a little further, I'll show you the farm that belongs to the giant troll," said the grey one. That's when they finally arrived. "Look, here's the troll's farm," said the wolf. "There you will find your 6 brothers. The troll turned them into stone. But there you can see the 6 brides. Over there is the troll's door, and that's where you must go in." "No, I don't dare," said the king's son. "You're sure to kill me." "Oh, no," replied the wolf. "When you go inside, you'll find a princess. She will tell you what you need to do to put an end to the giant troll. Just do whatever she says. Now, go ahead." So Ashlad went inside, though he was frightened. When he went in, the troll was away. In the room sat a princess, just as the wolf had said, because wolves don't lie. Ashlad had never seen a lovelier maiden. "Oh, God, save me. How did you get in here?" said the king's daughter, when she caught sight of him. "It will certainly be the death of you. Nobody has ever been able to put an end to the giant troll who lives here, for he never carries his heart with him." "Well, here I am, so I'll give it a try all the same. That I will," said Ashlad. "I'll also try to rescue my brothers, who've been turned into stone outside." "If you really want to try, let me help you," said the princess. "Crawl to that bed over there and listen closely to what I tell him. But by all means, keep very still." So Ashlad crawled under the bed, and no sooner was he well hidden than the giant troll came home. "Ugh, it smells like a Christian man in here. Like soap," said the troll. "Yes, a magpie came flying by with a man's leg in his beak, and it fell down the chimney," said the princess. "I hurried to shoo out the magpie, but it wasn't easy to get rid of the smell." Then the troll said no more about it. When evening came, they went to bed. After they'd been lying there for a while, the king's daughter said, "There's one thing I wanted to ask you, if only I dared." "What is it?" "I wonder where you keep your heart, seeing you never carry it with you," said the king's daughter. "Oh, that's not something you need to wonder about. It's under the doorstep," said the giant troll. "Ah, so that's where I'll find it," said the ash lad, who was lying under the bed. The next morning, the giant troll got up swiftly and awfully early and went off to the forest. No sooner had he left than Ashlad and the princess looked under the doorstep for his heart. Yet no matter how much they dug and searched, they found nothing. "This time it has fooled us," said the princess. "We'll just have to try again." Then she gathered up the most beautiful flowers she could find and scattered them along the doorstep after they'd put it back where it belonged. When the time came again for the giant troll to return home, Aslak crawled under the bed again. The instant he was well hidden, the troll appeared. It smells like a Christian man in here, said the troll. Yes, a magpie carrying a man's leg and his beak fell down the chimney. I heard to shoo the magpie out, but that must be what you smell. Then the troll fell silent and said no more about it. A little later, he asked who had scattered flowers around the doorstep. Oh, that was me. And what's the meaning of that? Asked the troll. Oh, it's because I'm so fond of you. I had to do it now that I know that's where you put your heart, said the princess. Is that so? Well, that's not where it is, my dear, said the troll. After they'd gone to bed that evening, the princess asked the troll again where he kept his heart. She said she was terribly fond of him, and that she dearly wanted to know. Oh, it's over there in the cupboard cabinet against the wall, said the troll. Is that right? Thought Ashley and the princess. And that's where we'll try to look for it. The next morning, the troll was up early again and left for the forest. No sooner than he had led, the ash lad, the king's daughter, went to the cupboard to look for the heart. But no matter how much they searched, they found nothing there. Well, we'll have to try again, said the princess. She adorned the cupboard with flowers and wreaths. When evening came, Ashley again crawled under the bed. Then the troll returned. Ugh, it smells like a Christian man in here. Yes, a little while ago, a magpie came flying with a man's leg in his beak and fell down the chimney, said the princess. I hurried to shoo the magpie out, but that must be what you smell all the same. Damn magpies. When the giant troll heard this, he said no more about it. After a while, he noticed the flowers and wreaths hanging all over the cupboard. He asked who had put them there. The princess said that she had done it. What is the meaning of such foolishness? Asked the troll. Oh, I'm so fond of you, of course. That's why I had to do it. Now that I know that your heart is inside the cabinet, said the princess. Are you really crazy enough to believe something like that? Said the troll. Yes, I have to believe whatever you tell me, said the princess. What a fool you are, said the troll. You'll never find where I keep my heart. It would still be fun to know where it is, said the princess. The troll couldn't stand it any longer. He had to tell her. Far, far away in a lake there's an island, he said. On that island stands a church. Inside that church is a well. In that well swims a duck. Inside that duck is an egg. Inside that egg, that's where my heart is, my dear. Early the next morning, even before the gray light of dawn appeared, the troll went off again to the forest. I'd better set off too, said Ashley, if only I could find the way. He said goodbye to the princess. When he came out of the troll's farm, the wolf was still waiting there for him. Ashley told the wolf what had happened to the troll's house. He said he wanted to find the well in the church, if only he knew the way. Then the wolf told Ashley to climb onto his back, for he was certain he could find the way, and they set off, rushing over hills and ridges and over mountains and valleys. They had traveled for many, many days, and at last they came to a lake. The king's son didn't know how he would get across, but the Grey One told him not to be afraid. Then the wolf set off with the prince on his back and swam across to the island. There they came to the church. The key to the church was hanging high on the tower. The king's son had no idea how he was going to reach it. You must call the raven, said the Grey One. And that's what the king's son did. The raven appeared at once and flew up to get the key, but then the prince went inside the church. When he came to the well, he saw the duck swimming back and forth, just as the giant troll said. Ashled stood there, coaxing and calling, and at last he managed to coax the duck over so he could grab it. But as soon as he lifted the duck out of the water, it dropped an egg into the well. Then Ashled didn't know how he was going to get the egg out. "You have to call for the salmon," said the Grey One. That's what the king's son did. The salmon appeared and brought the egg up from the bottom of the well. Then the wolf told Ashled to squeeze the egg. The instant he did that, the giant troll screamed, "Squeeze it again!" When the prince did that, the troll screamed even more pitifully. He began pleading so earnestly. They said that he would do anything the king's son wanted if only Ashled would squeeze his heart to bits. "Tell him that if he changes back your 6 brothers he turned to stone, that he will be allowed to keep his life," said the wolf. That's what Ashled did. The troll agreed. He changed his 6 brothers back into the king's sons, and their brides into king's daughters. "Now squeeze the egg to bits," said the wolf. So Ashled squeezed his egg to bits, and the giant troll burst. After he'd gotten rid of the troll, Ashled rode on the back of the wolf to the troll's farm. There stood all 6 of his brothers, very much alive, alongside their brides. Then Ashled went inside the mountain to get his own bride. Together, they all rode back to the royal palace. The old king was certainly overjoyed when all of his sons returned, each of them with a bride. "And yet the loveliest of all the princesses is Ashled's bride," said the king. "He will sit at the head of the table with his princess." And the wedding feast was joyously celebrated. If they haven't finished feasting yet, then they're still celebrating today. And then Bennett, by God, fed the wolf, because he did a lot of heavy labor. See, always trust the gray wolves. We know what we're talking about. Anyway, I'll get Ashled's story stuck in there. The next story, Dappleband. There once was a rich couple who had 12 sons. When the youngest grew up, he didn't want to stay at home any longer. He wanted to go out in the world and try his luck. His parents thought he had everything he needed at home, so he might as well stay with them. But he was terribly restless. He wanted to leave. He had to leave. Finally, they gave their permission. After he'd walked a good distance, he came to a royal palace. There he asked for a job, and he was hired. A troll had taken the king's daughter into the mountains, and the king had no other children. That's why both he and the whole land were suffering great sorrow and distress. The king had promised the princess and half his kingdom to whoever could rescue her. Many had tried, but no one had been able to do it. After the boy had been there for half a year or so, he wanted to return home to visit his parents. But when he got back, he found that both his parents were dead, and his brothers divided up all the family's possessions. There was nothing left for the boy. "Will I have nothing that belonged to my parents?" asked the boy. "How could we know that you were still alive? You've been wandering and roaming around for so long," replied the brother. "But never mind. Up in the heights there are 12 mares that we've taken. If you want them for your share, you can have them." The boy was pleased at that. He thanked his brother and set off once for the heights where the 12 mares were grazing. There he found that each of them had a suckling. One of the mares had a big, dappled foal with such glossy coat that it gleamed. "You're certainly handsome, my little foal," said the boy. "If you kill the 12 other foals, I can suckle from all the mares for a year. Then you'll see how big and handsome I can be." Damn. That's what the boy did. He killed all the other foals. Then he went home. The following year, he went back to see the foal and the mares. The foal was now so plump that his coat glistened and gleamed. The foal had grown so big that it took great effort for the boy to climb onto his back. All the mares, once again, had new foals. "Well, I clearly gained by allowing you to suckle from all my mares," said the boy to the yearling. "Now you're big enough to come home with me." "No, I need to stay here another year," said the foal. "If you kill the other 12 foals, I can suckle from the mares for one more year. Then you'll see how big and handsome I'll be next year." That's what the boy did. The next year, he went back up to the huts to see his foal and the mares. All the mares again had foals. The dapple foal was now so big that the boy could barely reach the horse's neck to feel how plump he was. And the foal's coat was so shiny that it gleamed. "Big and handsome you were last year, my foal," said the boy. "But this year you're even more splendid. Such a horse is not to be found even in the king's palace. You must come with me now." "No," said the dappled horse. "I need to stay here another year. Go ahead and kill the 12 other foals so that I can suckle from the mares this year too. Then you'll see me in summer." That's what the boy did. He killed all the other foals, and then he went home. When he came back the following year to see the dappled foal and its mares, he was quite horrified. He would never have believed a horse would have grown so big and bulky. Now the dappled horse had to get down on all fours for the boy to climb onto his back. He had a hard enough time getting on the horse when even the horse was lying down. The horse was so terribly fat, and his coat gleamed and glimmered like a mirror. This time the dappled horse was willing to go with the boy. What a fat horse. So the boy climbed onto the horse's back. When he came riding home to his brothers, they clapped their hands and crossed themselves, for they had never seen or heard of a horse that size before. "If you give my horse the best possible shoes and the most splendid saddle and bridle," said the boy, "then you may keep all 12 of my mares up there in the heights, along with their 12 foals." That year, each of them, again, had a foal. His brothers were happy to do as he asked. The horse was given such fine shoes that bits of stone flew high into the air when he galloped in the ridges. And he was given such a fine golden saddle, a fine golden bridle, that he could be seen glowing and gleaming from far away. "Now we're headed for the royal palace," said Dappleband, for that was the name of the horse. "You must remember to ask the king for a good stall, and proper feed for me." The boy promised not to forget, and then set off. And you might as well imagine, with such a fine horse, it didn't take him long to reach the royal palace. When he arrived, the king was standing on the steps, gazing and gawking at the approaching rider. My," he said. "I've never seen such a fine fellow or such a fine horse." The boy asked whether he might find a place to work at the palace. That made the king so happy that he was ready to start dancing as he stood there on the steps. Yes, of course, the boy could find work. "But I will need a good stall in the stable and proper feed for my horse," said the boy. The king said he would be given meadow hay and as much as the horse wanted. All the other riders would have to take their horses out of the stable so that Dappleband might have the place to himself. Then he would have plenty of room. It didn't take long for the others at the royal palace to grow jealous of the boy. There was no end to the wickedness they wished upon him, if only they dared. Finally, they decided to tell the king that the boy claimed if he wanted to, he could rescue the king's daughter. A troll had taken the princess of the mountain long ago. We had discussed that. The king summoned the boy at once. He said that someone had heard what he claimed, now he must do it. And as the boy knew, the king had promised his daughter and half the kingdom to whomever could rescue her. And that would be fair and proper reward if he could do it. If he could not, he would be killed. The boy denied that he had made such a claim, but it did no good. The king refused to listen. The boy had no choice but to say he certainly would try. Sullen and sad, he went down to the stable. There Dappleband asked the boy why he looked distressed. Why the long face? "Oh, I'm sure it can be done," said Dappleband. "I'll help you, but first you must shoe me properly. You must demand 20 pounds of iron and 12 pounds of steel for my shoes, as well as 1 blacksmith to do the forging and 1 to stoke the fire." That's what the boy did. His request was not denied. He was given iron and the steel of the blacksmiths. When Dappleband was both shod properly as well, the boy rode off from the palace, leaving a haze of dust in his wake. When he came to the mountain where the princess had been taken inside, he saw he would have to scale the slope in order to reach the top. The mountain rose straight up, as steep as the wall of a house and as slippery as a glass window pane. On his first attempt, the boy made it part way up the slope, but then the horse's forelegs slid back down. When they landed, it caused a great thundering in the heights. On the boy's second attempt, he made it a little further. But once again, the horse's forelegs slipped, and down they went, sounding like an avalanche. On the third attempt, the horse said, "Let go," and he took off so fast that stones flew up in the air around them. This time, they made it. The boy rode inside the mountain at full gallop. There he snatched up the princess and set her in the saddle, then rode out before the troll even had time to stand up. And so the princess was rescued. When the boy got back to the royal palace, the king was both happy and pleased to have his daughter returned, as well you can imagine. Yet somehow or another, the folks at the palace had managed to set the king against the boy, and he was angry with him. "I thank you for rescuing my princess," the king told the boy when he brought the king's daughter to the palace and was then about to leave. "She's now supposed to be mine, as yours as much." "I'm sure you're a man of your word," said the boy. "I certainly am," said the king, "and you shall have her, for that is what I promised. But first you must get the sun to shine inside the palace." Right outside the window, there was a big high mountain that cast a shadow that the sun couldn't reach inside. "That wasn't part of the agreement," replied the boy. "But I suppose no argument will do. I'll just have to try my best, for the princess I intend to have." He went back to the horse and told him what the king demanded. Dappleband thought they could do it, but first he needed to be newly shod. For that they would need 20 pounds of iron and 20 pounds of steel. 2 blacksmiths were also required, 1 to do the forging and 1 to stoke the fire. Then they would certainly be able to get the sun to shine inside the royal palace. When the boy made his requests, they were granted at once. The king was too embarrassed to refuse him. Dappleband was newly shod, and then the job was done well. The boy mounted the horse, and again they set off. For each leap that Dappleband made, the mountain sank 30 feet into the ground. They kept at it until the king could no longer see the mountain at all. When the boy went back to the palace, he asked the king whether the princess would now be his. As far as he could tell, the sun was shining inside the palace. The folks at the palace had again set the king against the boy. He said that the princess would certainly be his. He had never thought otherwise, But first, the boy would have to find her a bridal horse as splendid as the one he owned. The boy said the king had never mentioned this before. He thought that by now he had earned his princess. But the king insisted, and if the boy couldn't do it, he would lose his life. And that's what the king said. Hey, nice to see you come in, Proctor. How was Phasmophobia? Alright, Fussabot's working right. Cool. Hey, Papa Penguin. Let's see. Yeah, you're both playing Phasmophobia. A lot of people have been playing Phasmophobia tonight. Kind of makes me want to get the game. 5 more pages of the story. That's a ghost busting without the, proton packs. I've been playing with some of the bots to get them to do some auto posts. Like Fussabot doing the automatic shoutouts. It's kind of cool. Hey, Riley. Oh, God, that would be cool. And it's interesting enough you can do the smudge sticks and try to prevent with the crucifix, but trying to do an exorcism, I mean, they might as well have got the summoning circle, right? Yeah, I watched a few people do the summoning circle when usually talking the rookie of the group to do it. I think someone was talking about the rookie of the group gets volunteered to do any of the cursed items. You barked at a ghost? Why did you bark at a ghost?
I kept thinking about I know some of the local paranormal hunters in my area that I think it would be fun to get them to play the game just to see what they do. They use about the same equipment. I mean, that would be like exercising it by setting the bone on fire, Winchester style, you know. Gee, did it work to make her angry? What's a Radicky? Rookity. I don't recognize half the Pokemon thing that pops up in here. Just picturing someone barking at a ghost right now. So, how many times did you go through, and how many wins did you actually get?
Hello there.
Yeah, thanks for following, Faye. Sound not working. There it is. They just popping in the visitor. They actually wanted to hear the stories. Okay. That's the first time I've had the totem line pop up. It's first. Okay. Switch back to stories. Okay. 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 Back to Dappleband. The boy went down to the stable, and as you might as well imagine, he was both sad and distressed. There he told Dappleband that the king was now demanding that he should find the princess a bridal horse as splendid as the one he owned, or else he would lose his life. That certainly won't be easy, the boy said. Your equal surely can't be found anywhere in the world. Oh, yes.
Hello there.
My equal can be found, replied Dappleband, though it will be no easy task to get him, for that horse is in hell. Of course. Hey, welcome in, Dan. Let's see. But we'll have to try. Go back to the king and demand that I be newly shod. For that purpose, you'll need, again, 20 pounds of iron, 20 pounds of steel, as well as 2 blacksmiths, one to do the forging and one to stoke the fire. But make sure that the nails and caulks are all sharpened well. And we'll need to take along 12 barrels of rye and 12 barrels of barley, as well as 12 slaughtered oxen. You also need to get 12 ox hides with 1,200 nails in each. All of these things we will need, along with a barrel that holds 400 gallons of tar. The boy went back to the king and demanded everything Dappleband had said. Again, the king thought it would be embarrassing to deny these requests, so the boy was given all he'd asked for. Then he mounted Dappleband and rode off. After they'd gone far, far away over the mountains and moors, the horse asked, "Do you hear anything?" "Yes, there's such a vile rushing sound up in the sky. It's frightening me, it really is," said the boy. "What you hear is all the birds in the forest flying towards us. They've been sent to stop us," said Dappleband. "Cut a hole in the sacks of grain, and they'll be so busy with the rye and barley that they'll forget all about us." That's what the boy did. He cut holes in sacks of grain, so the barley and rye spilled out in every direction. Then all the wild birds in the forest came flying, so many that they blacked out the sun. But when they caught sight of the grain, they couldn't resist. They landed on the ground and began picking at the barley and rye until finally they began fighting with each other. But they did nothing to the boy and Dappleband. They'd forgotten all about them. Again they set off, going far and traveling for a very long time, over hill and valley, over mountains and moors. Then Dappleband began listening once more. He asked the boy whether he heard anything. "Yes, I hear such a horrible crashing sound coming from every part of the forest. Now it's really frightening me," said the boy. "What you hear is all the wild animals of the forest," said Dappleband. "They've been sent to stop us. All you have to do is toss out the 12 ox carcasses. The wild animals will be so busy with them, they'll forget all about us." The boy tossed out the ox carcasses, and then all the wild animals from the forest appeared. Bears and wolves, and lions, and all sorts of wild beasts. But when they caught sight of the oxen carcasses, they began to fight amongst themselves, so the blood flowed. They forgot all about the boy and Dappleband. They set off again, going far and traveling over bridge after ridge, for, as you might as well imagine, Dappleband did move slowly. Then the horse began to whinny. "Do you hear anything?" Dappleband asked. "Oh, yes. I hear what sounds like a foal whinnying faintly from far, far away," replied the boy. "It must be a full-grown horse," said Dappleband. "He sounds faint, for he's so far away." They continued for a good distance, traveling over ridge after ridge once more. Dappleband whinnied again. "Do you hear anything now?" he asked. "Yes, I hear him clearly. A grown horse whinnying," replied the boy. "Well, you'll no doubt hear him one more time," said Dappleband. "Then you'll hear what a voice he has." They rode again over ridge after ridge, and Dappleband whinnied for a third time. Before he had a chance to ask the boy whether he heard anything, a whinny echoed across the moors. It was so loud that the boy thought the mountains and the crags would split apart.
He's here, said Dappleband. Hurry and toss over me the ox hides with the nails, and drop the barrel of tar on the ground. Then climb up on that big spruce over there. When the horse appears, he'll be spouting fire from both nostrils. That will heat up the tar in the barrel. Pay careful attention. If the flames rise, I win, but if it falls, I lose. You see, if I win, throw the bridle on the horse that you may take mine, and he will be tamed. No sooner had the boy tossed the ox hides with the nails over Dappleband, dropped the tar barrel to the ground, and climbed up the spruce that the horse appeared. He was spewing hot flames. Fire flew into the tar barrel at once. The horse and Dappleband began fighting so hard that the stones danced high in the air. They bit and they kicked with both their forelegs and hind legs. At times the boys watched the horses, at times he watched the tar barrel. Finally the flame rose, for no matter where the other horse bit and kicked, it stuck to the hides with the nails. Finally he had to give up. When the boy saw this, he quickly climbed down from the tree and threw the bridle over the horse. The horse was then so tame he could have used a piece of yarn for the reins. This horse was also a dapple gray. He looked so much like Dappleband that no one could tell one from the other. The boy mounted the horse he had rode back to the royal palace. Dappleband ran alongside. When they arrived, the king was standing in the courtyard. Can you tell me which horse is the one I caught, and which is the one I had before, said the boy. If you can't, I think your daughter belongs to me. The king came over to look at both dapple gray horses. He looked high and low, to the front and behind, but there wasn't even a hair that was different on either horse. No, said the king, I can't tell you that. You've brought my daughter a splendid bridal horse, and you shall have her. But there's one more thing we must see if it's meant to be. First, she will hide 2 times. Then you will hide 2 times. If you can find her where she hides, but she cannot find you in your hiding place, then it's meant to be, and you shall have the princess. That's not part of the agreement either, said the boy, but if that's how it is, I suppose I'll try. Then the princess had to hide first. She turned herself into a duck and swam about in the pond that was just outside the royal palace. The boy went straight over to the stable and asked Dappleband where she'd gone. Oh, all you have to do is go take that rifle over there, go down to the pond and aim at the duck you'll see swimming about, said Dappleband. That will make her appear soon enough. The boy grabbed the rifle and went down to the water. I think I'll set my sights on that duck, he said, and he took aim. No, no, dear sir, please don't shoot, it's me, said the princess. He had found her. The second time the princess turned herself into a loaf of bread and placed herself on the table with 4 other loaves. She looked so much like the others that no one could tell them apart. The boy went over to the table and told Dappleband that the princess was hiding again, and he had no idea where she'd gone. Oh, all you have to do is sharpen a good bread knife and pretend that you're going to slice right through the 3rd loaf from the left. That's with the other 4 loaves on the kitchen table in the royal palace. Then she'll appear soon enough, said Dappleband. The boy went over to the kitchen and sharpened the biggest bread knife he could find. Then he grabbed the 3rd loaf from the left and set the knife against it, as if he wanted to cut right through the bread. I'm going to have the first slice of this loaf, he said. No, dear sir, don't cut into me, it's me, said the princess. The boy had found her, the 2nd time as well. Then it was his turn to hide. Dappleband made sure he would not be easy to find. First the boy turned himself into a horsefly and hid inside Dappleband's left nostril. Ew. The princess looked and snooped everywhere, both high and low. She also wanted to search Dappleband's stall, but he lay snapping and thrashing about. She didn't dare go inside. She couldn't find the boy. Well, I can't find you. You'll have to come out on your own, she said.
The boy appeared at once, standing in the stable. The second time, Dappleband again told him what he should do. This time the boy turned himself into a lump of mud and wedged himself between the hoof and the shoe of the horse's left foreleg. Again the king's daughter searched and searched, both inside and outside. Finally she came to the stable and wanted to go into Dappleband's stall. This time he let her come in. She snooped high and low, but she couldn't look under his hooves, for Dappleband had planted them firmly on the ground. Yes, he had. She couldn't find the boy. Well, you'll just have to come out again on your own. I can't find you, said the princess. The boy appeared at once, standing beside her at the stable. Now you're mine, said the boy to the princess. For now, you can see that it's meant to be, he told the king. Yes, if it's meant to be, then that's how it shall be, said the king. And plans were made, both properly and quickly, for the wedding. The boy mounted Dappleband, and the king's daughter mounted the horse's equal, and, as you might well imagine, it didn't take them long to reach the church. Oh, I love fairy tales, right? Let's see, how long is this? Okay, let's see, this one goes from 1271 to 79. Are you ready for another? See, we've done about 2 hours, so yeah, it's a little longer. May do. Let's see. Story. Okay. We'll do 2 more stories. Yeah, that's good. It's like the first story I read was, it took me half an hour to read, so. Excuse me. Okay, the next story. Nothing is needed by the one all women love. There once were 3 brothers. I don't really know how it happened, but each of them had been given one wish so that they could have whatever they wanted. 2 of the brothers didn't take long to decide. They wished that whatever they stuck in their fists, and whenever they stuck their fist in their... Hey, Wayward! God, I keep forgetting that creaky noise I have in there. Werewolf. Hey, playing Sniper Elite 5? Cool. So how's your night been? Heading out for the night? Okay. Get some good sleep then. Yeah, I was watching in there earlier and saw you calling the ball shot. That was kind of funny.
Best kind to bust.
Night.
Okay. Let's start this over again. This title, though, is killing me. Nothing is needed but the one all women love. There once were 3 brothers. I don't really know how it happened, but each of them had been given one wish so that they could have whatever they wanted. 2 of the brothers didn't take very long to decide. They wished that whenever they stuck their fists in their pockets, they would always find money. For if a person has much money as he wants, he will always make his way in the world, they said. Clever. But the youngest knew to wish for something even better. His wish was that all women would love him the instant they saw him. As you will hear, this was better than the other possessions or money. Excuse me. After they had made their wish, the 2 brothers wanted to set off into the world. Ashlad asked whether he could go with them, but they refused to let their brother come along. Wherever we go, we'll be received like counts and princes, they said. As for a poor boy like you who has nothing and will get nothing, how can you think that anyone will bother with you? You could allow me to go with you all the same, said Ashlad. Surely a scrap of roast might fall to me if I'm in the company of such high-ranking gentlemen. At long last they said that Ashlad could go with them, if he agreed to be their servant. Otherwise they wanted nothing to do with him. After they traveled for a day or so, they came to an inn. There were 2 brothers who had money went inside. They demanded both meat and fish, both liquor and mead, and all sorts of other good things. In the meantime, Ashlad had to tend to everything that belonged to the grand gentleman. As he went back and forth outside, roaming the yard, the innkeeper's wife happened to look out of the window. There she caught sight of the servant who'd arrived with the 2 gentlemen. She thought she'd never before set eyes on such a handsome fellow. She looked and looked at him, and the longer she looked, the lovelier the boy seemed. What in the name of bones of the devil are you standing there in the window gaping and gawking at? Said her husband. It would be better if you made sure the pig was roasted rather than stand there wasting time. You've seen what sort of folks have stopped here today. I know you have. Oh, I don't care about those high and mighty guests. No, I don't, said the woman. If they don't want to stay, they can just go back where they came from. But come over here. You have to see somebody who's out in the yard. Such a handsome fellow I've never seen before in my life. If you agree with me, let's invite him in and give him some food. He probably has little enough to his name, the poor thing. Have you lost what little sense you have left, woman? Said her husband. He was so angry that sparks flew off of him. Back to the kitchen with you. Hurry up and tend the fire. Don't stand there staring at some strange man. There was nothing for the woman to do but go to the kitchen and cook the food. She wasn't allowed to look at the boy, nor did she dare offer him anything to eat. But as soon as she was back in the kitchen and had put the pig on the spit to roast, she slipped out to the yard. There she gave Ashlad a special pair of scissors. All he had to do was snip at the air, and the scissors would cut for him the loveliest clothes that anyone would ever set eyes on. Clothes made of silk and velvet and everything else splendid. I want you to have these scissors, for you're so handsome, said the woman. When the 2 brothers had finished eating all the good food, both roasted and fried, they were ready to leave. Once again, Ashlad had to stand behind their carriage as their servants. Then they set off.
After traveling a good distance, they came across another inn. There the brothers wanted to go inside, but they didn't want to take along Ashlad, who had no money. He had to stay outside to mind their belongings. If anyone asks you whose servant you are, tell them you work for the two foreign princes, they said. The same thing happened as before. While Ashlad was wandering about the yard, the innkeeper's wife went over to the window and caught sight of him. She fell in love with him just as the first innkeeper's wife had done. She stood there looking and looking. She couldn't get enough of looking at him. Then her husband came rushing to the room carrying something the two princes had demanded. Don't just stand there gawking like a cow at the barn door. Come back to the kitchen and tend to your fish pot, woman, said her husband. You've seen what sorts of folks have stopped here for today. You know you have. I don't care about such high and mighty rabble. No, I don't, said his wife. If they don't like what they get, they can eat elsewhere, or whatever they brought with them. But come over here and take a look. I've never before seen in the world so handsome a fellow as the one out there in the yard. If you agree with me, let's invite him in and give him some food. It looks like he needs it, the poor thing. And how very handsome he is, said the woman. You've never had much sense, and I can tell that what little remains seems to have vanished, said her husband, who was now even angrier than the other innkeeper. He chased the woman back to the kitchen. Get in there! Don't stand around staring at boys, she said. She had to go back to her fish pot. She didn't dare give Ashley anything to eat, for she was afraid of her husband. But the minute he had stood the fire, she slipped out of the yard and gave Ashlad a special tablecloth. When it spread out, the best food imaginable would appear. I want to give you this, for you're so handsome, she said to Ashlad. The two brothers ate and drank their fill and paid a fortune for the feast. And then they set off, with Ashlad standing at the back of the carriage. When they traveled so far that they were hungry again, they stopped at an inn and demanded the most expensive and best food they could name. We are two traveling kings, and for us money grows like grass, they said. When the innkeeper heard that, he ordered so much food to be fried and roasted that it could be smelled at the neighboring farm. The innkeeper couldn't do enough for the two kings. Again, Ashley had to stay outside and mind everything that was in the carriage. The exact same thing happened as twice before. The innkeeper's wife happened to look out the window and catch sight of the servant who stood next to the wagon. Such a lovely fellow she had never seen before. She looked, and the more she stared at Ashlad, the more handsome he seemed. The innkeeper came rushing into the room, carrying the food the two traveling kings had demanded. He did not take kindly to seeing his wife standing at the window gawking. Don't you have anything better to do than stand there gaping when we have such fine folks in the house, he said to her. Get back to the kitchen and your sour cream porridge, and be quick about it. Sour cream porridge. Oh, I don't think it's so important. No, I don't. If they don't want to stay until the porridge is done, let them leave, replied his wife. Come here and take a look. I've never set eyes on such a lovely fellow as one standing over there in the yard. If you agree with me, let's invite him and give him food. It looks like he could use it. What a marvelous, handsome fellow he is. You've been chasing after boys all your life, and you still are, he said. He was so angry that he hardly knew which leg to stand on. If you don't go back to your porridge pot, I'll give you a swift kick, that I will. The woman had to hurry back to the kitchen as fast as she could go. She knew better than to fool with her husband, but after a moment she slipped out to the yard. She gave Ashlad a wooden spigot. All you have to do is turn the spigot, she said. Then you'll have the loveliest drink you could ever want. Mead, wine, and liquor. I want you to have this,
for you're so handsome. After the two brothers had eaten and drunk all they wanted, they set off from the inn. Again, Ashled stood on the back of the carriage as their servants. They traveled far, they traveled a very long time, until they came to a royal palace, where the two elder brothers presented themselves as the sons of an emperor. They had so much money and looked so splendid that their grandeur was evident given from far away. That's why they were given a gracious and proper welcome. They were to stay in the palace, and the king couldn't do enough for them. The guards at the king's palace took Ashlad, who still wore the same rags he'd worn back home, and who didn't have even a skilling in his pocket, and left him on an island. That's where they rode out to the beggars and vagabonds who showed up at the royal palace. That's what the king had ordered. He didn't want those people who looked so ragged and filthy to disturb the merriment of his palace. Out there on the island, they had only enough food to barely stay alive. Ashlad's brothers saw the guards rowing him to the island, but they were glad to be rid of him and didn't mind a bit. When Ashlad arrived on the island, he simply got out a pair of scissors and snipped at the air. Then the scissors cut out two lovely clothes anyone could imagine, clothes made of velvet and silk. Now, all the vagabonds' island looked even more splendid than the king and everyone else at the palace. After that, Ashlad got out his tablecloth and spread it on the ground. And then the vagabonds certainly had food to eat. The likes of the feast that appeared on the day of the Vagabond Island had been never served like that at the king's palace. I'm sure you must be thirsty too, said Ashlad. He got out his wooden spigot and turned it a little. Then the vagabonds certainly had something to drink. Even the king had never in all his life tasted such splendid ale and mead. When the guards who were supposed to bring food to the ragged vagabond came to the island, with crusted cold porridge and flasks of whey, that's the food they were supposed to bring, the vagabonds refused to even taste it. The guards from the royal palace were greatly surprised. They were even more surprised when they got a good look at the vagabonds, for they all looked so splendid that they could have been emperors and popes. The guards thought they must have rowed out to the wrong island. But when they took a closer look, they recognized everyone there. Then they realized that the boy they had rowed out that day must have given the vagabonds island such finery and delights. When the guards got back to the palace, they wasted no time reporting that the boy they had rowed out to the island that day before had now dressed all the vagabonds in such splendid and magnificent clothes that the finery was practically dripping off of them. They got that drip. They've become so high and mighty that they refuse to even taste the porridge that way we brought them, said the guards. One of them had also discovered that the boys owned a pair of scissors that he'd used to cut all of the clothes. When he holds the scissors in the air and snips, he produces nothing but silk and velvet, said the guard. When the princess heard this, she could find neither rest nor respite until she was allowed to see this boy with his scissors that could cut silk and velvet from the air. Those scissors would be worth having, she thought. And they would give her all the finery she could ever want. She pleaded with the king for so long that at last he had to send for the boy who owned those scissors. When the boy arrived at the palace, the princess asked him whether it was true that he owned a pair of scissors that could produce such things, and could he sell the scissors to her. Yes, he did own such scissors, Ashley told her, but he wouldn't sell them. Then he took the scissors out of his pocket and snipped the air so that scraps of silk and velvet whirled around the head of the princess. Oh yes, you have to sell me the scissors, she said. You can demand whatever you like for them, but I must have them. No, he wouldn't sell them for any price, he told her. Such a pair of scissors would never again find. As they stood there haggling over the scissors, the princess took a closer look at Ashlad. Like the innkeeper's wives, she thought she'd never seen such a lovely fellow. Then she began haggling over the scissors again, begging and pleading for Ashlad to sell them to her. He could demand as many hundreds of dollars he liked. It didn't matter as long as she got the scissors. No, I won't sell them, said Ashlad. But that's neither here nor there. If I'm not allowed to sleep on the floor next to the door inside the princess's bedchamber tonight, then she may have the scissors. I won't do her any harm, but if she's afraid, she can have 2 men stand guard in her chamber. The princess gladly granted the request. As long as she could get the scissors, she was happy. So that night, Ashlad slept on the floor inside the princess's bedchamber, while 2 men stood guard. The princess didn't get much sleep. She found herself opening her eyes again and again to take another look at Ashlad. That went on all night. If she didn't happen to close her eyes, she had to open them once more for another peek at him. That's how handsome she thought he was. In the morning, Ashlad was rowed back out to the Vagabond Island. When the guards again brought crushed cold porridge and flasks away for the royal palace, no one wanted to touch the food. The guards were even more surprised by this. Then one of them discovered that the boy had owned the scissors, also owned a tablecloth. All they needed to do was to spread it to the best food you could ever want appeared. When the guard got back to the royal palace, it didn't take him long to report what he discovered. The likes of such roasts and such sour cream porridge have never been seen in the king's palace, he said. When the princess heard this, she went to tell the king. She begged and pleaded so long that he had to send the messenger to the island to bring back the boy who owned the tablecloth. Once again, Ashlad came to the palace. The princess dearly wanted to have his tablecloth. She offered him gold and green forests for payment. But Ashlad didn't want to sell it for any price. But if I'm allowed to sleep on the bench outside the princess's bedchamber tonight, then I shall have my tablecloth, said the boy. I won't do her any harm, but if she's afraid, she can have 4 men stand guard the chamber. The princess agreed to the request. Ashlad slept on the bench in the princess's chamber while 4 men stood guard. But if the princess hadn't slept much the night before, she slept even less this time. She could hardly close her eyes at all. She lay there looking at the lovely boy all night long, and yet she thought the night was far too short. In the morning, Ashlad was rowed back to the Vagabond Island, though it wasn't what the princess had wanted. She had grown very fond of the boy, but there was nothing to be done. He had to go back. When the guards from the royal palace brought the crusted porridge and flasks of whey for the Vagabonds to eat, not one of them would even look at what the king had sent. None of the guards were surprised by this, but they did think it was strange that the Vagabonds weren't thirsty. Then one of the king's messengers discovered the boy who had owned the scissors and the tablecloth also had a wooden spigot. If he turned it just a little, the loveliest drinks anyone could imagine appeared: ale, mead, and wine. When the man got back to the castle, he couldn't keep his mouth shut any better than he did on the first 2 occasions. He told anyone who would listen about the spigot and how easy it was to get all manner of drinks. The likes of that ale and mead have certainly never been tasted here at the king's palace, he said. It's sweeter than both honey and syrup. When the princess heard this, she wanted to see the spigot at once, and she had nothing against haggling with the boy who owned it. Again she went to the king and asked him to send a messenger to Vagabond Island. She wanted to summon the boy who had owned the scissors and the tablecloth, and who owned one more thing that would no doubt be worth having. The king heard that it was a special wooden spigot that could produce the best ale and best wine anyone would ever drink. All it took was a little turn of the spigot. Well, I don't think it took long before he sent off a messenger. When Ashlad arrived at the castle, the princess asked whether it was true that he owned such a special wooden spigot. Yes, he had it in his vest pockets, Ashlad told her. But when the princess tried with all her might to buy it, Ashlad said the same thing he'd said twice before. He wouldn't sell it for any price, even if the princess offered him half the kingdom. But that's neither here nor there, said Ashlad. If I'm allowed to sleep in the princess's bed, on top of the coverlet tonight, she shall have the wooden spigot. I won't do her any harm, but if she's afraid, she can set 8 men to stand guard in the chamber. Oh no, that won't be necessary, said the princess. She knew him well enough by now. So that night, Ashlad slept on top of the coverlet beside the princess. If she hadn't had much sleep on the 2 previous nights, she slept even less this time. She couldn't close her eyes at all. The whole time she lay there and looked at Ashlad, who was sleeping beside her on the edge of the bed. When she got up in the morning and the guards were about to row Ashlad back to the Vagabond Island, she asked them to wait a moment. Then she ran to the king and begged him earnestly to give Ashlad as her betrothed. She said that she was so fond of him that she didn't want to live if she couldn't have him. You may certainly wed him if that's what you want, said the king. Anyone who owns such special things is just half as rich as you are. So, Ashlad got the princess and half the kingdom. And he would be given the other half when the king died. Then everything was both fine and good. But he sent his brothers, who had always treated him badly, out to the Vagabond Island. There they can stay until they've discovered for themselves who is least needy, the one who has his pockets full of money, or the one all women love, said Ashlad. I don't think it will help much for them to stick their hands in their pockets and jingle their coins out of Vagabond Island. If Ashlad hadn't taken them off the island, they're still out there today, eating crusted, cold porridge and whey. Okay, not sure what the moral of that story is. Pretty boys have privilege? I don't know. That sounds like a big grim fairy tale version of it. It's like, well, if you're beautiful, you don't have to have anything else because people just give you things. That kind of goes against the... yeah, don't be a fucking jerk's pretty good moral, too. Then was Machiavelli's Prince. There's supposedly better to be loved than feared, but make them afraid to love you. I don't know. It's been a while since I read that book. Honestly, someone had me read the Prince when I was like 13. Of course, I wasn't expecting that to be an Ashlad story. I'll have to tag Asklad when I post those. I keep thinking I was hearing rain. It's just the background of my audio. Yeah, that's just next one will be 3 Ashlad stories tonight. That's crazy. There's a say my audio has gone quite a bit. It's only a 2-hour story. What if my audio started over when I came back to it? That's weird. Like the... Alright. Have a good night. I think I've only got one more short story I was going to do. If you want to stay around for that one, I mean, that's only a page and a half. Yeah. Anyway, well, if you go to bed, have a good night. Thanks for coming through. I'll probably watch the stream a couple times tomorrow. Tomorrow is going back to Grimm's Fairy Tales. So. Okay. So, Cubs, Final Force. Okay, Cubs. Last story for the night. Ashled, who got the princess to say he was lying. There once was a king who had a daughter, and she has told such lies that nothing could be worse. Then he decreed that anyone who could tell a big enough lie that the princess would say he was lying could both have her and half the kingdom. Many tried, but everyone wanted to have the princess and half the kingdom, but it didn't go well for any of them. And there were also 3 brothers who wanted to try their luck. The 2 older brothers were first to set off, but it went no better for them than all the rest. Then Ashled set off. He found the princess in the cowshed. Good day, and nice to see you again, he lied. Good day, she said. Nice to see you again, too. I bet your cowshed isn't as big as ours. When 2 herdsmen stand at either end and blow on their billy goat horns, you won't be able to hear each other. Oh, there you're wrong, said Ashled. Ours is much bigger. When a milk cow starts at one end, she won't give birth to her calf until she gets to the other side. Is that right? Well, I bet you don't have an ox as big as ours. Take a look over there. If someone sits on each horn, they won't be able to reach each other with a goalpost. That's nothing, Ashled said. We have an ox that's so big that when someone sits on either horn and blows on a lure, they won't be able to hear each other. Is that right? Said the princess. I bet you don't get from your cows as much milk as we do from ours, she said. We use 2 big basins for the milking. Then we bring in the milk inside and pour it into big pans and make big rounds of cheese. Oh, we use big bats for milking, said Ashled. Then we put the milk into carts and wheel them inside. We pour the milk into a big wash tub and make cheeses as big as a house. Then when you get a mare, pale as a moose, to stamp the cheese into big piles. One time the mare gave birth to the cheese, and after she'd eaten the cheese for 7 years, we found a big pale horse. I was once supposed to take the animal to the mill, and suddenly it flew off its head. Damn, I'm trying to read this too fast. I'm going to start that one over because it's too much fun to say. Okay. Josian. Ashled, who got the princess to say he was lying. There once was a king who had a daughter, and she told such lies that nothing could be worse. Then he decreed that anyone who could tell a big enough lie that the princess would say he was lying could have both her and half the kingdom. Many tried, for everyone wanted to have the princess and half the kingdom, but it didn't go well for any of them. There were also 3 brothers who also wanted to try their luck. The 2 older brothers were first to set off, but it went no better for them than did the rest. Then Ashled set off. He found the princess in a cowshed. Good day. Nice to see you again, he lied. Good day, she said. It's nice to see you again, too. I bet your cowshed isn't as big as ours. When 2 herdsmen stand at either end and blow their billy goat horns, they won't be able to hear each other. Oh, there you're wrong, said Ashled. Ours is much bigger.
When a milk cow starts at one end, she won't give birth to her calf until she gets to the other side. Is that right? Said the princess. Well, I bet you don't have an ox as big as ours. Take a look over there. If someone sits on each horn, they won't be able to reach each other with a goalpost. That's nothing, said Ashlad. We've got an ox that's so big that when someone sits on each horn and blows on a lure, they won't be able to hear each other. Is that right? Said the princess. I bet you don't get from your cows as much milk as we do from ours, she said. We use big basins for the milking. Then we bring the milk inside, pour it into big pans, and make big rounds of cheese. Oh, we use big vats for the milking, said Ashlad. Then we put the milk in carts and we wheel them inside. We pour the milk into big wash tubs and make cheeses as big as a house. Then we get a mare, pale as a moose, to stamp on cheeses into big piles. One time the mare gave birth on the cheese, and after we'd eaten from that cheese for 7 years, we found inside a big horse, pale as a moose. I was once supposed to take the animal to the mill. Suddenly his back flew right off. But I knew just what to do. I picked up a spruce sapling and set it on the horse's back. That's the only way to get the animal out front, for as long as we owned it. Then the spruce grew, and it got so big that I climbed up the tree into heaven. When I got there, I saw a Virgin Mary spinning ropes out of the soup grains. All of a sudden, the spruce blew away, and I couldn't get back down. But the Virgin Mary lowered me back down on one of the ropes, and I landed in the fox den. There sat my mother and your father, bending shoes. Suddenly, my mother hit your father so hard that the scabs flew off him. You're lying, said the princess. My father has never been scabby. Okay, that's just weird. Oh, cool. Yeah. Craziness. Craziness abounds. Yeah, that's definitely be the last story for tonight because it's so all over the place. And I was all over the place reading. So, thanks for everyone who stopped by. Man, actually, a lot of people coming tonight. Oh, man, even got enough people in here that a bot showed up to try to get followers and viewers and Prime. I haven't had one of those show up in a while. Let's see. Let's see who's online that we can do raid to. I don't get to do very many raids because most of the time it's just me. And my vision's in blurry. Must be time. Let's see. What are we in the mood for? Someone did Pokemon trading cards, Epic Legends, Mark doing Lydian Chronicles. I try to find someone who's kind of like me that hasn't gotten affiliated yet, so let me shake in on a few people. If you nope. And of course my Twitch is trying to freeze up on me.
as does happen. Come on, Brave. What the hell? Okay. Yeah, if anyone has any raid suggestions, I will take them. Cause actually, let's see, is he still on? If he's still on or not. Nope. No, I'm gonna get to go to him because. Actually, you know what? I may do that. I mean, she came in here. We might as well raid her back. As Riley came in here, let's go raid her. So yeah, it's only fair. Oh, she set the forward only. Sound fair? Oh, yeah, let's go spread some love, shall we? Have a good night, Cubs.